to The Future of What? I'm your host, Portia Sabin, president of the independent record label Kill Rock Stars. We talk all the time on this show about how musicians have had to become extremely creative in order to make a living these days, when you can't count on royalties from album sales like you once could. Some artists have managed to create a niche for themselves by seeing an opportunity and going for it, like the band OK Go did when their first video went viral. On today's show, we're going to talk to some musicians who created their own niches and are quite successful as a result. Their stories prove that there's not just one path to success. So young musicians, take note. If you see an opportunity, take it. It could really work out for you.
Can I have a taste of your ice cream? Can I lick the crumbs from your table? Can I interfere in your crisis? No, mind your own business.
My guest is Simon Tam of the band The Slants. Welcome to The Future of What, Simon?
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. So you have an awesome story. So I want you to tell our audience just how did your band get started and what do you guys do?
A lot of times people call us the world's first and only all Asian American dance rock band, which is kind of a mouthful, but it kind of got started because I watched a movie, Kill Bill from Quentin Tarantino. And I got it. When it came out on DVD, I was watching it, and there's a scene of this woman named Ornishi. She walks into a restaurant, and she walks in with this gang of crazy 88s. And that moment was so powerful for me because it struck me that I'd never seen Asian Americans depicted as cool, confident, and sexy before on any mainstream film. And then I thought about my art, my passion, which is music. And I thought, wait, how come people don't? There's nobody that looks like me on the Billboard charts or in Rolling Stone or in MTV back when they used to play music videos. Like, why is there's even though there's 17 million of us, how come we have almost no representation? And so then I had this idea. I was like, maybe I should start a band that deliberately celebrates my culture in a bold kind of way with music that kind of throws back to 80s synth pop. And so that's kind of how we got started. But from then on, it became this whole series of adventures, like of being that Asian band, of like kind of thrown into weird niches when it wasn't quite expected, of tackling anime conventions as a market and everything else.
So tell us the story of how you got started with the anime conventions, because that is something I think that people would not have expected, and it's a really unique story.
Sure. So back in 2006, when I was looking for musicians to recruit for the band, I got invited to an anime convention. I thought, oh, great. There's going to be a ton of Asian kids there. Maybe some play music and I can meet some of them. It turns out it's a bunch of white kids who are obsessed with Asian culture. And most of them don't play music. But as I was going through there, I noticed they're just really into the culture, and they were paying $50-$60 for import CDs. And I thought, well, if I brought in a real band here that isn't doing imports, we can do quite well. And so I went back home. I emailed the convention right away, even though I didn't have a lineup yet. I said, hey, I play in this Asian band called the Slants. I want to play at your convention. And they're like, you're Asian? Sure. You could be our guest of honor next year. So I was like, that was easy. And I was like, okay, I better get a lineup together. And as soon as I had that lineup, I was trying to convince them all, like, we got to play anime conventions. This is a great market. And they were all used to doing clubs and that kind of thing. They're like, that's crazy. Why would you ever do that? And I was like, just trust me. Like, nobody else is doing this. So we went and played that convention. And in that one show, we made enough to basically buy us a tour bus, pay for all our merch, and put out our first album.
Whoa.
Just from one show. And they had never heard of us before. But
wow.
We had like 800 kids just jumping and screaming and dancing, like treating us like we were total rock stars. And then I thought, we got to do this all the time. So I went and just contacted a bunch of other conventions. And I was like, we played this one con. You should invite us too. And sure enough, a lot of them were inviting us in because they didn't really have any bands out there. And so to this day, we've actually played more anime conventions than any band in the world. And the funny thing is, we have nothing to do with anime. We've never been on an anime soundtrack. We don't play anime cover songs or anything like that. But because we've kind of established ourselves in that market, people see us as that kind of go-to band.
Wow.
And so we get flown all around the world to play these conventions. And I kind of tell by the attendance numbers how many CDs I'm going to sell that weekend and how many T-shirts to bring because it's consistent.
Wow.
And so like at minimum, I'll bring I know I'm going to sell like 50 discs and a bunch of T-shirts. And it just works out really, really well. And so we've actually kind of structured our career around it. Like I book entire tours using anime conventions as our anchors. So if we play for a club and only make $100, I know I can go to a convention that's going to put us in like a 5-star resort and play for a couple of days where we can shower and eat and make enough money to pay for the tour and have my band members taken care of.
Wow, that is really genius. That was a genius move on your part to do that. So, and you told me before that you actually used to play more anime conventions and you've cut back.
Yeah, I mean, ever since the economy kind of took this hit, people had less and less spending cash. Conventions kind of scaled down their budgets. And so that impacted us quite a bit. But as things are picking up, we're actually starting to play more conventions again. Like starting this year, we were in the news quite a bit recently. I started getting a lot of interest from other conventions. So we're seeing that pick up quite a bit. And even overseas too, like conventions in Europe and Australia are looking into us now.
Wow. You guys are going to go all the way around the world just on
conventions. I'm trying to book this anime convention in Moscow right now, but Google Translate is not working out so well. So if I could find someone to translate, then it
this is a radio show, so write to us at thefutureofwhatshow@gmail.com if you are a Russian translator.
You
or
could be our tour manager.
There you go.
Come with us.
You can go to Moscow with the Slants. So you mentioned you've been in the news lately because of this legal issue. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So for the last 6 years, we've been fighting against the U.S. government, in particular the U.S. Trademark Office, because when we filed an application to register our band's trademark, they said no. They said your name is disparaging to Asians, even though we're all Asian and a huge chunk of our audience is Asian American. And so we've been fighting in this thing in numerous courts over and over again, but we just came out of the federal circuit, which is one step below the Supreme Court, and the federal circuit ruled in our favor, saying that the Trademark Office was actually abridging our First Amendment rights.
Wow.
And so this ruling actually was quite historic because they're striking down a federal statute of law. One that we discovered through our legal case was allowing the Department of Justice and Trademark Office to deny people rights based on their race or sexual orientation. So we were able to get rid of that and move forward with expanding the First Amendment. So it's been pretty incredible.
Wow.
There was this lawyer convention in San Diego that was held a couple months ago of like IP lawyers, and they're like, the Slants are the most famous band in the world for lawyers right now. So the other thing we're doing now, in addition to anime conventions, is now I'm touring law offices and playing private parties for lawyers, and we're going to law schools, and I go as a speaker, and sometimes our band performs, and so it's fascinating.
Wow.
I'm not a lawyer, and I probably will never be, but apparently through this struggle, I've gotten to know this law more intimately than most lawyers do in their entire career. So they're having us speak, and then like, oh, it'd be fun is like having the band play too. And
I love that. That's
sure,
the lawyer's second thought. That would be great to have a band play too. Like that might be fun for some people.
Yeah. So we're going up to Seattle right now. We're going to do this thing called CLE, which is like a training for lawyers that they need for certification and other things. And then we're going to be playing for a bunch of lawyers in their law offices like right after.
Wow. That's fantastic. And lawyers have money. So
lawyers have money. So
that's going to be a good audience for you.
Maybe I'll say like, this is an import CD, $50.
That's incredible.
But if anything, it helps having a bunch of lawyers be friendly towards you if things come up.
Wow. So now another interesting thing about your band, because you run your band a lot like a business, which a lot of bands are sort of bands of friends and it's very casual, but you have an application online, correct? If you want to be a member of the Slants, you have to apply.
Yeah. My band members joke about this all the time. So one of the ways to filter out band members, aside from like their ethnicity, is that I have this application and it has the typical stuff you ask, like their name, contact info, but it also has questions like, why do you want to join this band? Like, what about this band appeals to you? What's your work ethic like? Do you have transportation? We ask for dietary preferences. There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's like short answer sections. we got a new lead singer about 2 years ago, and he was like, it took me like 2 hours to fill out this thing. I was like, yeah, but that's how I knew you would be serious about this band. In addition to having that application on our website that people fill out, once we get that and kind of sort through the candidates we like, we actually bring them in for a live audition. And so we'll rent out a venue in town, and people are expected to show up and do a 5-song set with us without ever rehearsing with us, just to see if they could pick up our songs, see how they perform on stage, and we videotape them performing with us. And we basically treat it like a live show, except no one's in the room. It's just us and the video camera. And then after they perform with us, we do an in-person interview for about 15 to 30 minutes just to feel them out, see what their personality's like, see if they gel with the band, and kind of go from there. So it's quite a process, but I'd say this is something I've learned over the years after having a lot of turnover in the band, that I really wanted to make sure if people joined that they were really serious about the band, that they would honor their commitments, that they wouldn't flake out on us. And then once they're in the band, I think they appreciate the process because they're like, we went through all of this together, and it's almost like hazing them in or something because then they kind of bond over it, and they make fun of me all the time. Like if they screw up at a show, they're like, oh man, Simon's going to put this on our performance review.
You do performance reviews?
I don't actually, but maybe I should.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
But we definitely treat it like a business, and I treat them like employees. But it also, through that process, they become like family too,
right?
Because they realize that how much is at stake. That I remind them all the time, like this isn't just about like your show, like you performing well. Like if you screw up or if you're late to a show, that affects all of us and all of our livelihoods.
Right.
And so they all know that, and so there's like this deeper connection, and it creates like this really great work ethic among the band.
I think it's genius. I mean, from my perspective, it's genius because I've just worked with band after band and had these, heard stories, and also actually worked with people who just give up for the craziest reasons, or, I can't tour because I'll miss my girlfriend too much, or,
sure.
I mean, just crazy. I think I told you the story of the first band I managed whose drummer refused to go on tour because he didn't want to lose his job at his dad's grocery store.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, you've got the rest of your life to be a checker. Like, if that's really your biggest ambition, like, come on, man, you can be a rock star.
And it's funny how, like, people just don't really think about these things before they make those commitments. Mm-hmm. And that's why we even interview the applicants if they have a spouse. Like we took my drummer and his wife out to the singer who was auditioning and his wife, just to make sure that, like, okay, this is what it's going to be like. Can you be apart from each other for months at a time? And then we actually have our drummer's wife there so she could explain what it's like from her point of view. And then they kind of bond when we're on the road and that sort of thing. But we have to like vet through these things so we're not about to jump on a tour and then have somebody back out right last minute.
Absolutely.
We need to be able to honor those commitments and make sure that they actually want to have that kind of a lifestyle.
Exactly. Yeah. And you guys also are making real money, it sounds like, Yeah,
I mean, enough to like where most of the band doesn't have like day jobs and that sort of thing.
So, and that's an important part of that, right? If you're going to take a job that actually supports you, because I think that's one of the problems with bands. People get into bands when they don't have any money.
Sure.
So it just seems like a fun thing that you're doing with your friends. But then if it grows and it becomes something, then you have to reassess everything.
Yeah, you have to treat it like a job. And it's like, will your job allow you to show up totally drunk or late all the time? No. And so we have that written to the band contract that you're not drinking on stage. You're responsible for your own equipment, like all that kind of basic stuff. And once we get those conversations out of the way, it just makes it a lot easier to breathe because we know we can count on each other. We know what the expectations are, like right from the beginning. And it's great. I mean, I love the band members that I have now. They treat it like a profession.
That's awesome. So you created your own niche, basically, and you guys are being very successful in this niche that you created. Do you have your sights on any other niches that you think you can move into at this point?
We're actually working into doing films now.
Really?
So there's a filmmaker who's making a documentary on our band's legal case, but we're going to be touring China, Japan, and Taiwan this year. And so we were thinking about doing a DVD of each of those where we kind of talk about us meeting our family for the first time, reconnecting with our ancestral homelands or our heritage, so to speak, while playing these rock and roll shows and seeing what that's like. And we're also really, really into food. Like we have this Yelp channel, we release food guides. And so we might be doing reviews of restaurants on tour as well now.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Maybe we'll convince Anthony Bourdain to tour with us.
Well, Simon Tam is a musician and an entrepreneur and a creator of niches. So thank you so much for joining us on The Future of What?
Thank you for having me.
Always happens in this downtown.
That was Capture Me Burning by the Slants. You're listening to The Future of What? Find us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Bandcamp. Charmaine Clamor is America's leading Filipino jazz and world vocalist and the self-proclaimed queen of Jazzipino. Charmaine, thanks for joining us on The Future of What?
Hi, thank you for having me.
So your story is so exciting and interesting. You grew up in the Philippines in a small town, correct?
Yes, in the town of Subic, Zambales, which is north of Manila, which is the capital city of the Philippines.
And you started out playing piano for your mother. You accompanied your mom, correct?
You're right. My mom sings soprano, and I used to accompany her after dinner and while my dad listened.
So how old were you when you started playing piano?
I got piano lessons when I was 6 years old, and I started accompanying her. If my memory serves me well, Portia, it's probably I started accompanying her maybe when I was 9 or 10, something like that.
Wow. And she sang songs that were both classic Filipino songs and also English songs, correct?
Right. Yes. But mainly a lot of kundiman or the Filipino heart-wrenching ballads in the 40s and 50s.
So how did you come to your love of jazz?
Well, jazz started coming to the Philippines during World War II. And both my mom and dad were children of World War II. And so that was their popular music back then. And so when I was born, that was the music that was playing in our living room when I wake up in the morning. So that was all I listened to, and classical music, you know, just like how you would wake up. And so that's a kind of music that kind of got into my blood And it was almost natural to me, as well as what we call OPM, original Filipino music.
So you describe your music as Jazzipino. And can you describe that for our listeners?
Jazzipino is a combination of this unique American art form called jazz and Filipino music, indigenous instruments, and languages or dialects. Jazz, Filipino, Jazzipino.
I mean, I love your music. It's beautiful, but it's very unique.
Thank you.
You know, you have
Thank you.
a gorgeous voice, but you also you sing in both English and Tagalog. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, that's right. Very, very well, actually. Very impressive.
Oh, thank you. And you write original songs, and it's an impressive blend for an artist, who could just be singing the classics. You have a beautiful voice. You could just have made a living singing the classics. What made you decide to do this unique blend that you came up with?
Because I believe that it's who I am as a human being, and and art is an expression of who you are. And so because I grew up both listening to Filipino music and jazz, so my music is just an extension of me, and that it's just the organic result of that upbringing of mine, of my childhood.
And so now, of course, you have an international reputation. You have fans all around the world. And how is it in the United States when you go on tour?
It's very interesting because I get very mixed results. Sometimes I'll get some really, really warm, really, really warm audiences. And then I know that they have heard the music before, and they would sometimes sing with me, especially my Funny Brown Pinay, which is probably my biggest hit. And then I will go to other places where they have not heard me before. And it's interesting. And some of them, it's like any other artist, either you convert them or not. In some areas, I've noticed even with radio airplay, some of them like the traditional jazz, which is not the fusion, which is what I do, which I believe is a fusion. And so they're more traditional, and those areas, basically, they are not as open to what I do. I mean, they like it, but, they're not as, more as hardcore as the other areas. And what's really interesting to me is that it used to be just Filipinos who would listen to the music, but because I think music is, as we know, it's universal. So I would have mixture of different cultures listening to the music, which is very gratifying to me.
Absolutely. No, I think that's amazing when an artist can bridge cultures. And I think that, today's show, we're talking about artists who have been able to open a niche for themselves. And I'm talking to you because I think you've done an amazing job of doing exactly that. It's not every day that you think of, Jazzipino.
Right. Me too. It's really an interesting journey for me, Portia, because I never thought that it will be a niche. It's just it wasn't planned or marketed that way, which is something that, like I said earlier, it was just an extension of who I am, what I grew up with as a young, as a child in the Philippines, where jazz started permeating the Philippines in World War II, and my parents were, of course, product of that, and that's how it happened. And now, because of the unique childhood background, that's how my music was highly influenced.
And you've lived in the U.S. for years, but you are actually quite a big star in the Philippines. Is that right?
I would not say a big star. I would say, well, I'm not a pop star. Pop star is like all over, but I think jazz won't have the same audience reach as pop stars. I think that's just the way it is. So I would say to a certain part of the Philippines, I do have a really good following there, yes.
Well, you've done a duet with the president of the country. That seems like a pretty big deal.
It is so true. That was so awesome. Yes, it's so awesome because he is the president when my parents and I migrated to the Philippines. It was during the People's Revolution. And his mother President Corazon Aquino was the revolutionary president then, after throwing the dictatorship. And so I thought, I did not know that I would be able to sing in a Malacanang Palace with the president, with my parents, and it would be the president, the son, right? The son of the woman, the housewife who managed to throw off the 20-year dictator from our country. I thought that was such a powerful sign for me, or pivotal moment in my life.
Absolutely. That's truly amazing.
Yeah, and he can sing, man. He can really sing. So that was so pleasurable. And the beautiful thing about that was that concert was just done for me, because I was there. It wasn't that they had an event and they invited me. It was actually put up for me. So that really made me feel very special, especially the fact that I could bring my parents.
Of course.
They were there too, so I could bring them to.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
That is wonderful. So you have 4 albums, and what is coming up next for you?
I have 4 out. Now I'm trying to think, wait, do I only have 4 albums? I think I do have, I think I do have 4 albums. My latest one is The Better Angels. So that one is still kind of new to me. And this Better Angels Festival has brought a community of volunteers who just wanted to be at their best, or tap into the better angels of their nature. And so what it brought was 10 days of giving free healing services or health services during the day, and free cultural arts at night. So we did it for 10 days, and we did another one in October, and then we're going to do another one, I believe, in the spring of this year. So it's become a movement from that album. So I think that's one of my most beautiful works so far, this movement that was inspired by this album.
Wow.
So that's what's coming up. Yes. And I think that more and more that album is in English, but more and more I think my direction this year is to go back to my roots and really sing the music of my blood, of my motherland. Whether it's original, creating more original songs, or having our own arrangement of music from the motherland.
Well, we look forward to hearing that when you do.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you.
Charmaine Clamor is the queen of Jazzipino. Charmaine, thanks so much for being with us on The Future of What today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Take a look at my skin. It's brown. Go ahead. Look at my nose. It's flat. I'm singing for all my sisters growing up thinking they don't look right, 'cause they ain't white. Scrubbing with papaya soap to make it light. Girl, I think you're out of sight. You are beautiful. Maganda ka. Ikaw ay Indio. Ikaw ay Filipino. My funny brown benign, sweet comic brown benign. You make me smile with your heart. Your looks, they say are laughable, unphotographable. a bone. Yet you're my favorite work of art.
That was My Funny Brown Panay by Charmaine Clamor. If you're enjoying this program, please consider becoming a subscriber on Bandcamp. Just go to thefutureofwhat.bandcamp.com. To find out what's coming up next, follow us on Twitter at KRSFOW. Now, back to the show. Eric Isaacson is the owner of Mississippi Records, and we are so pleased that you're joining us in the studio today. Welcome to The Future of What, Eric?
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, today's topic is basically people creating their own niches in the music business. And we're talking about this because I think it's important for people to realize that you don't just have to do what everybody else does, and that a lot of times things work out better in the music business when you kind of follow your own path and you think of things that other people haven't thought of and you just do it. A lot of times people can really be successful in doing that. So we wanted to talk to you because you own Mississippi Records, which is both a store and a label. So can you give us a little bit of background about how you got started with that?
I started the store back in 2003. Honestly, I had no business plan or no idea what I was doing. I just was moving back to Portland after a long absence, and I couldn't find a job and was offered a space real cheap. So I just decided I had cobbled together a little bit of savings and started the store with just, when the day we opened, we just had $50 in ones and fives in the register and no business plan, no idea how to get credit if things failed, no idea if anything would sell. But fortunately, things did really well, and we ended up surviving quite well, strangely, bizarrely. So it was sort of a desperate act, and it worked out in my favor.
So tell us what you sell at Mississippi Records.
It's an all-vinyl store and cassette tapes and stereo gear. Originally, we had CDs too, but when we opened, the neighborhood was a little rough, and we would have people, like suddenly the amount of cars being broken into was, up by 20 times as much as it was before we opened, because people were just smashing windows and grabbing CDs and bringing them in. So I became a repo agency for CDs, and I quickly stopped selling them. So we went straight vinyl. So everybody thinks I have some kind of anti-digital thing or anti-CD thing, but in fact, it was just a way to protect the windshields and windows in our neighborhood. So yeah, we're vinyl and cassette only record store, and that's about it.
And that's interesting because you this is one of those things where you can never say, right? It's a chicken and egg, I don't know, but it really was zeitgeisty for you. Like, you guys happened to start the store at a time when people also started to get really back into vinyl and then started getting really into cassettes again. We've talked about that a bunch on this show, about how in the last few years that's just been an explosion. We talked to the guys from Burger Records, for example, who sold over 300,000 cassette tapes, which...
Get out of here.
Yeah, it's such a crazy number to think because, cassettes are the format of my childhood.
Yeah, sure.
So,
that's wild.
It's funny that there's, 18-year-olds running around with cassettes.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Our cassette sales are almost as high as our vinyl sales, which are bonkers. And
That's
a lot of it's,
nuts.
we have $3 cassettes, and that, I think the price point really drives up that market more than anything. But yeah, I would have seen that coming. We have like a cassette series of just janky mixtapes that look like a 5-year-old made them. I make them, but, my art, the level at which I can draw and sort of design things is at the level of a 5-year-old. So, and these sell, we sell 500 of these a month, maybe.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And these are like, if you saw these, your jaw would drop that we can sell 500 of these a month, but we do. And people seem to like them too.
So talk about your clientele a little bit. What kind of changes have you seen over the last few years in the people who come into the store?
It has gotten a lot younger. And it's gotten a little bit more homogenized. Originally, we were very much a neighborhood store. We had all walks of life coming in, just all the weirdos who still kept their record players and never adapted to CDs. Because at that point, there weren't a lot of vinyl stores. And in my neighborhood, there wasn't a vinyl store since the 80s, except for punk stores, that just had punk LPs. So we had every little old person and every young person who still played with their record player coming in. And it was really a cross-section that was really diverse. Since then, it's sort of, the neighborhood has changed, and so we've actually become strangely a tourist destination largely. Touring bands are a huge part of our clientele, an unbelievably huge part of our clientele.
Wow.
We're sort of on this strange Portland map of, the sort of quirky businesses that you go to visit to see weird Portland or whatever the hell, this sort of thing that's being perpetrated by Portlandia and all this kind of stuff. And so we get a lot of tourists, a lot of record collectors from around the world.
Wow.
And that's about, I know this will blow your mind, maybe 60% of our sales are people outside of Portland
Wow.
buying things from us and showing up. And we don't have a web store. We're not on the internet at all.
You guys don't even take credit cards.
We don't take credit cards. We still don't have an inventory system that's digital. We do everything in a notebook with a pen and a calculator.
Oh my God.
And then when we reorder, we do it out of our heads, you know? So
Wow.
it's a pretty primitive operation with not a very, and yet we because we have a record label that sort of makes its way around the world, we attract all these people from around the world buying records, and it's really bizarre. And part of, I'm really excited about it now. It took me a big adjustment, you know, watching sort of a road as a local store. We also have 5 new record stores just within spitting distance of us, whereas,
Wow.
you know, we used to not. So the market for records is really split in my neighborhood. And they're good stores, too. So it's not like, you know, crappy stores here and there.
Right.
We have 5 good record stores in
It's
the
not
neighborhood.
like you and TJ Maxx.
No. It's me and 4 other great independent stores, all
Wow.
within essentially walking distance. And it used to be just me. So
Yeah.
that doesn't help. So, you know, I had my grievance period of that, like in the 2010 to 2013, where I was sort of like, oh, all my local people, where's my neighborhood, woe is me. And then slowly I noticed this pattern where business wasn't going down, it was still going up. And I realized we have a global community now, and I have to adjust to that.
Wow.
Instead of having a local community.
How does that affect your ordering? Like do you basically just get stuff into the stores that you love? Is that still what you do?
Yeah, it hasn't affected anything. The aesthetics of the store has been steady since the day we opened. It's really been, the idea is, the most important thing is price point, trying to keep everything lower than every other store in town and just kind of keep everything to where it's affordable. And I think that's ultimately why we win. Like these days, you know, anybody can get any record, but how often can you walk into a record store and most of the deals are decent and better than the internet and better than the neighborhood stores? You know, that's what we try to focus on. But then beyond that, we have a pretty narrow taste. We do every genre, but it's sort of based on just what we think is the best of the best in that genre. But our sort of weird version of that, which is, you know, it's its own version of that, let's just say.
So you're listening to The Future of What? And we're talking to Eric Isaacson, the owner of Mississippi Records. So let's talk a little bit about the label. When did you start the label?
The label started a couple years into the store existing, and we started it just because there were certain genres of music that weren't really being represented on vinyl at the time. This was in 2004 is when we started it. And at that point, there were not a lot of reissue labels happening that were covering blues, gospel, you know, things that I was interested in, African acoustic guitar music. There was nothing really covering that. And so I started the label mainly just to put records in my own store and a few friends' stores across the country. I had no idea that there would be a market beyond that. So we were a 500 press, kind of, you know, hand gluing the record covers together ourselves using photographs and screen prints that we made. You know, this was a real DIY operation. I was running it out of my bedroom in a punk house. You know, just filled with boxes and assembly line, and would go into the post office every morning before work, then working all day, and then coming home and assembling and gluing records with you know, I'd have all the kids in the neighborhood come in and bribe them with ice cream and cartoons to sit there and glue with me all night. And like, it was, you know, the jankiest of janky operations. And that's how we started, strangely.
That's incredible. And so now what are you doing each year in terms of numbers of vinyl?
We've slowed down recently, but at our peak, about 2 years ago, we were doing 40 releases a year, pressings ranging from, you know, we still occasionally do 500 press for more esoteric stuff, but some things on our label have sold as much as 8,000 copies.
Wow.
And some of the most bizarre stuff that you would never in your wildest imagination think we could sell that many of, we have. So like a organ player from Niger who recorded something in 1978 that sounds kind of like undersea adventure music mixed with, I don't know, Kraftwerk or something. And this is like, you know, we'll sell 8,000 of this, and it's inexplicable. I still don't understand what's going on, you know.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so.
But you have a distributor.
We have multiple distributors. Our label, it's funny, we have amazing distribution despite ourselves. We do direct-to-store distributing through our own distro. But then beyond that, we've been lucky enough to have a lot of major distributors in America pick us up, and in Europe too, and a little bit in other parts of the world. And we haven't been aggressive about it at all. We have no press. We don't even send out one sheets. We don't send out anything like that unless requested. to distribute our label, you have to call us and say, can I distribute your label? And that's the only way we've ever gotten a distro. We've never once tried to seek out a distro in the history of our label.
Wow.
Or a store. We've just been lucky and had people call us.
When you say major distributors, do you just mean big, or are they actually major label distributors?
Oh, no major label distributors. I'm sorry.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, no. When I major by my standards, which would be like Forced Exposure. Oh my God, they're huge. Or Revolver. These are, to me, I know in the scheme of things, these are small distributors, but in my world, these are tremendous.
Right.
Ernie B's Reggae is a huge distributor by my standards. So.
Right.
But we do well because we work with these very niche, sort of specialized distributors, and they really in turn champion our stuff more because they're small and because they sort of care about something they can actually sell 100, 200 of. To them, that's good numbers. So they'll look at us as a very saleable thing, as opposed to if we were with one of the big major label distributors, they'd be like, 200 copies, Jesus, this is a waste of time, forget it.
You would never have gotten that call from one of those major distributors, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not worth their time.
No, absolutely not, yeah.
That is amazing. I love the story. It's such a cool story. It's sort of like you guys can do it on your own terms. Now, you haven't added tons of staff, right, to cope with, no matter how much you guys are doing, you really haven't added tons of staff?
No, we haven't added much staff. We've had virtually the same staff since we started. Nobody's ever quit, and everybody just kind of hung out. We still make a really meager living. I mean, we never figured out how to make money off this whole thing. We've expanded pretty enormously, but at the same time, somehow we make less money even though we've gotten bigger.
Well, I mean, Kill Rockstars has done a similar thing. We used to put out, I think the year I took over, 2006, we had 47 releases that year. So you do find that when you put out more records, the money goes out more than it comes in.
Yeah, I'm learning that the hard way. This year we ratcheted it down to quite a few less releases, and I've gotten a little more tight. But for a while there, I went mad with power, and I was just so excited I could do this, that I could get these things when I got. And I love so much music that wasn't being represented on vinyl, so I'd overreach, and I got a little stupid and crazy, and now I'm sort of paying the price and ratcheting everything down, doing smaller presses. I've been humbled, I've been slapped down.
Right.
And that moment where I could sell, there was a moment before this sort of revolution of new reissue labels and sort of vinyl resurgence, and I'm talking right before that, which I would say is like 2004 to 2008. I really think it really exploded in 2008, 2009, maybe in 2010. Right before that, we were covering certain genres of music you could only get through our label, which is bonkers, but that's how it was. And at that point, I just got so cocky. I could put out anything. I'd put out a record of a guy beating on a trash can and screaming, and I'd sell 2,000 copies. Or, like there was this one record we put out, Bishop Perry Tillis, where it's a beautiful record, but talk about difficult. It was like this guy would record himself into multiple boom boxes. So he'd record one part in a boombox and then in another, and then he'd play all the boomboxes at once and record himself playing along with the boomboxes to make a chorus of his own voices. And this was like a very, cacophonous but beautiful kind of sound, and like as lo-fi as you could imagine recording being. And to me, it was like one of the most beautiful things ever. And I just put out 2,000 of it, and we sold them, and this is something that now I can't imagine selling 2,000 of.
I was going to say, that'll make you think you're God. You're like, well, here you go.
I just felt like people.
I can do anything.
It was less about me, it was more about the world. I was like, the world just wants to hear this beautiful stuff. I'm right. This stuff is beautiful. Right. Everybody needs this, And to me, 2,000 people, to Kill Rockstars, I'm sure that's a small number, but to me, that was like enormous.
No, 2,000 is great.
Is it?
That's fantastic. I think for anybody's standards. Yeah. So now talk to us about the whole digital world, like digital downloads and streaming. I'm assuming you guys don't do any of that.
Yeah, we don't participate in that. And it's nothing against that way of receiving music or that whole world. It's more a matter of comfort zones and aesthetics. I just don't understand it, to be honest, and I'm not part of it. Also, we've actually managed to get some really great artists to work with us in archives because we don't do this. So sort of the deal I get to throw down is, hey, I'll do the least profitable and most annoying thing to deal with, vinyl, for you. I'll pay you a royalty in advance. We pay all royalties in advance. And I'll do a limited number of copies, and then then there's no exclusivity, and you can take the artwork, take the music, do whatever you want, and release it yourself digitally or through another server, or whatever you want to do, through Bandcamp, Yada Ying, whatever works for you, I don't know. And you can put out the CD, you can work with other labels, I don't care. As long as I get to do my little vinyl version of it, I'm happy. So there's no exclusivity, and that allows certain people to work with us. Somebody like the Alan Lomax archive will be like, well, this is great. We get a physical product out there. We get a little bit of money, and we still get to stream this on our website and have it free for the public on YouTube and all these things that we like to do and sort of community service things we like to do. And this company is not telling us what we can and can't do and who we can and can't license to and, all this kind of stuff. So we're kind of an ideal partner because I don't participate in that. And this was not by design. This was just accidental based on me just being uncomfortable with digital and not understanding it. And I'm still like a primitive. I don't even have a cell phone. I don't, I've never streamed a song. I've listened to music on YouTube, and that's about the extent of my digital music listening.
I think it's a really interesting model because it frees your mind a lot. For me as a person who runs a label, because when we put out an album and we put it out in all formats, the problem that you instantly face is, well, someone buys the CD, they rip it onto the internet, and then they pass it around the internet, and it's already out there for free. Mm-hmm. So all this money that I've invested and all this time I've invested is potentially going down the drain because this person just bought one copy and now has given it away to the rest of the universe. I think that's less of an issue nowadays. It's sort of things seem to be evening out a little bit. But a few years ago, that was like a really big concern. We were losing real sales to internet piracy. But if you just put out the LP version and the rest of the formats are the artist's issue, then you don't even have to think about it. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And I'm not wrapped up, I'm not uptight about all that stuff. And there's such a finite world of people who collect vinyl that I can sort of understand it a little better and predict numbers a little better and create pressings that are the right size and just walk away after that pressing. The downside is like a lot of artists on our label get the short shrift who aren't very savvy with dealing with digital and all this. And I wish I was better equipped sometimes. I wish I could have partnered with someone who was smart in this area to sort of benefit the artists on our label. And promotion, like we don't do any promotion. So some artists on our label now are contemporary artists who are still out there playing and, I'm their label, and these poor souls are stuck with a label that does no tour support, has no idea how to engage with the internet or promotion or Twitter or whatever, And so these poor saps are like stuck on the worst label for a contemporary artist to be on. But they get a nice vinyl version and really good distribution, so it's sort of a trade-off. But then it's up to them to do the rest of the hustle, for better or worse.
Right.
Sometimes for better. You'll have artists like we have like Marisa Anderson on our label, who's a great guitarist, and she's savvy and cares a lot about her art and knows how to work on the internet a little bit, but with class, and not gross. And so she's got her stuff out there in a beautiful way. I'll have an equally talented artist who I'll put a record out by and it will sell just equally well on vinyl, but because they don't have Marisa's acumen for sort of pushing the limits and really being dedicated, it'll just disappear. And there'll be this weird record that exists in all these weirdos' record collections and never to be heard from again, sitting on a dusty shelf somewhere.
Right.
So it goes.
Right. But that's kind of everybody's problem, I think, right now, because I think one of the pieces of fallout from the internet revolution is that artists they just have to be more savvy, because 50% or more is artist interaction with their fans and driving people to actually, want to interact with them and want to get involved.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing that, then there's nothing that a Kill Rock Stars can do. You know what I mean? We can't buy that coverage for them if they're not going to be interactive.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree. I guess the idealist in me, and maybe this is the because the grass is always greener kind of thing, like because I'm the kind of person who's too much of a dunderhead to deal with that stuff, I'd like to think that other small labels like Kill Rock Stars do have the potential and have in the past, I know they have in fact, helped artists get their stuff out there and sort of take care of their artists. I mean, the whole music industry is predicated on exploiting artists, really. It was created to exploit and artists in a star system where it's like, here's the few people who do really well and everyone's crawling to get to the top and be part of that 0.001% who actually make it, and everyone else is supposed to be killing each other to get there. I'm getting off topic, sorry. But so it's like capitalism, it's like the 1% thing. It's like we're all fighting for the one piece of bread when we should be creating a sustainable system for all artists that just helps us all survive. And
Amen.
a label's responsibility, I think, is to try to create that atmosphere and that thing where a small labels, where an artist can just survive. And creating a record, we're doing one thing to help. We're just, like you said, we're confused on how to go all the way. Maybe 20 years ago, there are ways to really support an artist and really create that structure. And now it's so dispersed and so weird. We don't know what to do. We're scrambling. But I have faith that small labels like yours is going to come up with creative ways to continue to support artists and sort of help them be sustainable to just be a band and exist in the modern world and not just, have to hustle all the time and sell your stuff to Campbell's Soup or, that's an outdated reference, Coca-Cola. They're still around, right?
Isn't Campbell's Soup still around? I think they are.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, cool. So, I don't know. I think we're living in an age when, artists, it's a patron society, and all these artists, the only way they ever make money is selling to commercials or TV shows or this kind of thing. And, it's up to the labels, small labels, to start to create alternatives for them to make a living.
Right. And I agree with you completely. And the term I always use is career artist. My goal is to create career artists, not to help somebody become an overnight, one-hit wonder, because we're not positioned to do that. We're not going to make you Lady Gaga. That's impossible.
Yeah.
But we also don't want you to write one album, put it out there in the world, and then go home and become a, waiter or something.
Right.
We want you to do this. If you're a great artist and we believe in you, we want you to be able to do this for a living. And that does mean these days cobbling together a whole bunch of other stuff. I think what I meant with my statement before was that we can't do it for you. Artists have to participate. And I feel like sometimes artists don't understand that. They sort of say well, I'm going to go home and you'll call me when you make me famous.
Right.
When you get my career off the ground.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there.
So there has to be that participation where you care. I mean, honestly, it's just like anything else, right? If the artist doesn't care about their career, I can't care more than the artist does about their career. It won't work.
I know, I agree with you. And really, all the artists who do best on my label are ones who I've been lucky enough to catch them in the sort of later years of their career. And they've built on a DIY level this whole thing, a band like Dead Moon who toured for, almost 20 years and built a fan base person by person for 20 years. And they sold, maybe 1,000, 2,000 of one of their records during that 20-year span. And now I can put out one of their records and sell 6,000 copies or whatever because of all the hard work they already did all their lives. And I think about that a lot, and I feel so lucky as a label to be able to piggyback on their success. Michael Hurley's a good example of that too. He's been playing since 1963, and I piggyback onto him in now, and get to take advantage of all of his hard works. And I look back on their whole careers, and it's humbling because they're still packing their own boxes from their websites when people order stuff, and they're still going on tour, and they're still working so hard themselves, and doing so much for themselves because they believe in their art and because it's just, they're industrious. These are working class people who know how to push their own agenda and push their own thing. And I'm always I feel bad, I feel like I should be able to do more than I am. And I guess that's what I'm saying is I want somebody to, maybe this is a call out to arms to all you people in the music industry out there, come to me, tell me how to build a structure that will make Mississippi Records sustainable and able to help these artists. Because instead, all I'm really doing, putting a little money in their pocket and giving them a record to sell at shows. But I haven't figured out how to do more than that without compromising my vision.
But that's such a critical part these days of the thing that artists have to do to cobble together a living. Giving them something to sell at shows is huge because that's where they make their, the gas money and the food money. I mean, that's huge. And then actually paying them a royalty is also huge.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of labels, I mean, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the internet lately, but there's been some stuff going around about labels that have chronically not paid artists for years and years. And that's been just really upsetting to artists to discover, oh, hey, wait a second. Those records that I thought went nowhere, well, they did sell, but no one ever gave me any money for
Deal
it.
the dirt. Which labels are they talking trash about?
I can't say on the air. I'll tell you later.
Okay, fair enough.
But, you know, and that's something that Kill Rockstars we've done since the beginning is paid our artists.
Yeah, you guys have a good rep.
And that's been so important to me. When I took over the label, that was like my number one priority is we got to be able to keep paying people because this is their livelihood. I mean, I want career artists. I don't want, you know, someone who has to be a dishwasher.
When I started Mississippi, I decided to pay all artists in advance for pressing. So if I press 2,000 records, I pay the full royalty for all 2,000 in advance. And the reason I did this was selfish mainly because I didn't want to deal with artists calling me every week and being like, where's my check? Oh my God, why have I only sold this many copies? What are you doing? Like you were saying, the sort of entitlement issues. But also it was a way to win trust and sort of make things simple. And also I'm a terrible accountant and I didn't want to keep track of all that stuff and do inventory over and over again, and especially with working with 9 distros in America alone. So it was just like, oh my God, dealing with this is just going to be a nightmare. Like what is actually sold, what hasn't, who has what on their distro shelves collecting dust, what is actually sold. So I simplified it like that. And I mean, that's a luxury that I'm sure most labels don't have. You know, that takes a lot of forward capital and sort of, I managed to do that because my editions were selling out relatively quickly. So I could pull that off. So in a way, it cut me clean of the artists, though, because here's your records, here's your money, see you later. You know? And then good luck with your career. And then I call and go, actually, I didn't want to repress it. What do you think? Or let's do a second record. And that's about the next time they hear from me.
Right.
So it's kind of like I'm having affairs instead of long-term relationships. You know, nobody has exclusivity to me or any sort of deal where they just have to deal with me.
Polyamorous record
dude,
label dude.
So the love is there, but it's not as solid as maybe it should be or as consistent, you know. So what can you do? We do the best we can with what we got.
On that note.
Yeah, a weird note to end on.
Eric Isaacson is the owner of Mississippi Records, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And that's our show. The music we played today was used by permission. You heard the Slants, Charmaine Clamor, Marisa Anderson, and of course our theme song, Mind Your Own Business by the Delta 5. If you have a question you want answered on the show, please email us at thefutureofwhatshow@gmail.com. Our episodes are archived at killrockstars.com/thefutureofwhat, and you can subscribe to our podcast on Bandcamp, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. Follow us on Twitter at KRSFOW. Our program was engineered by Brent Asbury at Beta Petrol and is produced by Will Watts and Anna McLean. I'm Portia Sabin, president of Kill Rockstars. See you next week. Was Marisa Anderson.